This is the moment the government's flagship Rwanda policy was ruled unlawful.
The Home Secretary's appeal is therefore dismissed.
Rishi Sunak had wanted to fly asylum seekers to the Central African country to have their claims processed. The plan was to deter people from crossing the channel in small boats. The courts of appeal had already ruled against the plan, saying Rwanda was not a safe country, a decision upheld by the UK's highest court today. The policy was deemed unlawful, with a real risk that asylum seekers could be sent back to the places they fled from. This was not just a major legal test, but a political one too. For many MPs on the right of the Conservative Party, the flights to Rwanda were central to Rishi Sunak's pledge to stop the boats. But the policy has been an uphill battle for the government from the very start. In April 2022, following a drastic increase in the number of channel crossings, then Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced the Rwanda plan in what he said would act as a very considerable deterrent. 2 months later, the first deportation flight to Rwanda was cancelled just minutes before takeoff, after the European Courts of Human Rights intervened. In December last year, the High Court ruled the policy to be lawful, but ordered the cases of the first 8 deportees to be reconsidered. Then, at the beginning of 2023, the current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announced legislation to tackle the migrant crisis as one of 5 key priorities for his premiership. After that, in March, a High Court judge ruled that asylum seekers facing removal to Rwanda can appeal against Home Office decisions over alleged errors in the consideration of whether relocation poses a risk to their human rights. In July, MPs learnt that the Home Office was paying thousands of pounds for empty hotel beds reserved for migrants to avoid overcrowding at processing centres. Meanwhile, the UK's asylum backlog hit a new record high, with 80% of people waiting longer than 6 months for an initial decision. This led to the then Home Secretary Suella Braverman to advocate for the United Nations Refugee Convention to be overhauled as part of wider efforts to stop small boats crossing the Channel, comments that were later rebuked by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Ms Braverman has been a major proponent of the policy from the very beginning.
If you deliberately enter the United Kingdom illegally from a safe country, you should be swiftly returned to your home country or relocated to Rwanda.
But earlier this week, she was sacked from her position as Home Secretary, and today her dreams were dealt a huge blow. Today's ruling means it's back to the drawing board for Rishi Sunak. Earlier in Parliament, he had this to say.
The government has already been working in advance on a new treaty with Rwanda, which we will finalise in light of today's judgment, so to address the challenges that were raised. But let me say this again, if it becomes clear that our domestic legal frameworks or international conventions are still frustrating plans at that point, I am prepared to change our laws and revisit those international relationships. The British people expect us to do whatever it takes to stop the boats, and that is precisely what this government will deliver.
With small boat crossings unlikely to end anytime soon, some may now demand the Prime Minister take Britain out of the European Convention on Human Rights, which is seen as a major block to the policy.